So today we're going to be talking about prayer, but not just a regular prayer class, which I've done over the years, quite a few, but we're going to take a look and see some extrapolations and see how what Jewish prayer has about it that can maybe help us understand, at least understand. We have to understand what the problem is, the essential problem is, and then once we understand the problem, then you can work towards a solution. The problem is everybody's trying to find solutions without defining the problem properly, and you have two different sides solving a different problem. So how are you going to get together if you don't agree on what really the underlying problem is that's causing all the dissonance in society? All right, so I happen to have behind me, this is my local synagogue. This is the Masad Binyamin. It's named after Binyamin Rothschild. Binyamin Rothschild was the baron who donated all the lands up here. Our village was founded in 1901, and he passed away in 1934. And his wife, Ada, decided, since he loved Yavneel so much, she had a synagogue built in his honor, and his name was Baron Edmond de Rothschild, from the French part of the family. And he's known in Israel as the Nadiv, the great philanthropist. And he built the seven sisters, they're called the seven main Moshavot. Yavneel is one of them. Zichron Yaakov, if you've been here, Binyamina is named after him. His Hebrew name was Binyamin. Edmund was Binyamin. And that's why our shul is called Binyamin. And that's why Binyamina is named after him as well. So, but I haven't been in this synagogue since March, since Purim time. I asked the Shiloh of my Rav, I asked my rabbi, what should I do? And because I'm high risk, he said, you should be praying individually instead of in a quorum. They're having services now. They started up with social distancing. We have a small community in a big space, so there's maybe 10 people in this room here. The Torah is behind me. That's where the Sefer Torah goes. The bima, the platform behind me is where they read the Torah, right? You bring it out from there and read the Torah. This is where the prayer services take place in our synagogue. Right now, they take place at Beit Shmuel, the house of Shmuel. That's where my services take place in my house for now. And God willing, I'll be back. We'll get rid of this Corona thing, and prayer is probably part of the secret to that. All right. So what I want to do today is we're going to go through some definitions. And that's one of the things I like to do here is clear up misconceptions. We hear the word prayer. People have an understanding of what that means based on their background and what the English means, right? But it's important to go to the Hebrew. We're going to get definitions of prayer. Not only are we going to get definitions of the word, we're going to see halachically, according to Jewish law, how do you fulfill your obligation to pray? What is it to pray, and how do you do it? And once we've finished, we're going to try to figure out, okay, what's unique about these ideas that we can apply to our society and understand why we are having the problems that we're having. All right, here we go. The obligation to pray. Where does it come from? So it's referenced in the Torah, in the verses, two places. We see here in Exodus and in Deuteronomy. From these two, we're gonna find the actual commandment to pray. So it says here in the Hebrew, "V'aretem et Hashem Elokechem, uverach et lachmecha ve'et meimecha, v'hasiroti machala mikirbecha." Whoa, that's interesting. So here's the word "v'aretem." It's translated as to serve. We're going to take a look and see what that means. This word la'avod, la'avod. Here it's translated as to serve. You should serve your God. So what does that mean to serve? Well, what's interesting, when we take a look at this, you see that the consequence of doing this avodah, you serve God, he's going to bless your bread and your water. There's going to be physical bounty. There's a connection between serving God and physical blessing, right? Removing disease. You're removing disease. You're getting bread and water, right? Physical sustenance and healing is connected to avadatim. So when you read this, you shall serve your Lord their God in English, you'd say, oh, so that must mean doing mitzvahs, right? Oh, here in Deuteronomy, we're going to see if then you observe the commandments. We had this problem in our obedience session. If you remember back, there's no word for obedience. Some translations might say if you obey the Lord your God instead of serve. Down here, actually, I saw the translation that said, and if you obey the commandments, it doesn't say that, right? If you listen, and if you integrate, pay attention to my directives, my commandments that I'm commanding you today, to love Hashem, your God, ule'avdo b'chol levavchem. Here's that same word again. To serve him with all your hearts. It says levavchem, that means your heart. Lev means heart, which means your emotions. And lev also is Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew for mind, right? We say, don't take it to heart, never mind. It's similar in Hebrew. Your mind and your heart are connected. So it says, you should serve him with your emotions and your intellect, with all of your being, your soul. So we have two things here. We're serving. We have a commandment to serve Hashem. What does that mean? Obey, do the mitzvahs. What does it mean? And here it says, "La'avdo b'chol levavchem." So when you're serving him, you should do it with all of your hearts. So what's avodah? This word avodah. Avodah means service, work, or worship. You'll see it translated as all those different things from time to time. So avodah, avod. In modern Hebrew, avodah is work. But it's which kind of work? We had this in our Shabbat session. The word eved, ayin bet dalid, that's the shorish, that's the root of avodah. Eved is a slave. Avadim hayinu, we were slaves in Egypt. It's a servant or a slave. That's an eved. And in modern Hebrew, we have the word an oved. Oved means to work or a worker. It means a worker or an employee, right? If at Galilee Green, I have an oved, Elisheva. Some of you know her. You've been in touch with her. She's a worker, but we call that an employee, as opposed to my gardener. The gardener's not an employee. He's an independent contractor. He comes and he does peulot. He does activity. He acts and does labor in the garden. He's not an employee. All right? There's a difference between employee and a poel, a laborer. So what is it? Avodah means an action that's showing a relationship with a higher authority. Avodah, meaning service. I'm serving you. I'm acknowledging by me serving you that you have authority over me. If I'm an employee, or if I'm a hired servant, or if I'm a slave, right? The employee does work. That when the employee does the work, it's acknowledging their subservient position to the higher authority, the employer. Because if they weren't beholden to them, then for their money, then why would they bother doing that work, right? So that work is an action. So avodah is an action acknowledging your subservient position to the higher authority. Now, even if we're in Hebrew, we call idol worship. Idol worship is called avodah. It's also called avodah zarah. Now, what's interesting is, in Hebrew, we are very precise about the language. And avodah zarah, idol worship, means you're doing an action. You're bringing an offering. You're bringing a sacrifice to this tree, to this stone, to Mercury, a planet, a star, the moon, the sun. You're bringing an offering. You're sacrificing something. And by doing that, you're acknowledging that this thing has power over you. So you're doing avodah, but it's zar, it's strange. That's strange worship. Why would you do an action showing that you're subservient to something that you're not really subservient to? The tree has no power over you that you're worshiping. The statue has no power over you that you are worshiping. So why are you doing that? In Hebrew, we don't edify it. We don't edify that action by calling it a religion, right? It's a legitimate way to worship. It's strange worship. Why are you offering something to a tree? What's a tree going to do for you? All right. So that's avoda. So now we know what avoda is, right? We want to do actions that are going to show our subservient position in our relationship to God. That's avoda. So what's avoda halev? What's avoda in your heart? So we're going to now come to Maimonides in the 12th century, and he was the one that codified the 613 commandments and put them in encyclopedic form. And this is his section dealing with prayer. And the very first comment he makes about prayer is to define what it is. So he says, mitzvah aseh. There are positive commandments, thou shalt, and negative commandments, thou shalt not. So to pray is one of those positive commandments, thou shalt, you shall do it. So it's a mitzvah aseh lehit palel. This is the word in Hebrew for to pray. Lehit palel, b'chol yom, every day. Shnei amar, v'avadatem et Hashem Elokechem, right? So that's the first verse we saw. That is a commandment. You should serve God, and we understand that to mean to pray. Why? The service referred to here, mipi hashmua, according to our tradition, she'avodah zuhi tfilah. It's prayer. Shnei amar, like it said in Dvarim, we saw this verse earlier, uleavdo b'chol levavchem, and you shall serve him with all of your heart and mind. Amru chachamim, so what did the sages say? Ezohi avodah shebalev, which service is the service of the lev, of the heart and the mind? Zot tfilah, that is prayer. So this is how we understand it. That particular kind of service says you shall do the mitzvahs. There's all kinds of other words that are used, and there are consequences. You know, when you honor your parents, then you live a long life on the land, it says. So here, this avodat balev, serving God with your heart, we understand that to mean avodah shebalev is tefillah, is prayer. Now, Maimonides goes out of his way to mention at this point that the Torah doesn't decide how many times you have to pray a day or a month or when you have to pray. There's no format for the prayer, nor does it give a fixed time for the prayers. The Torah doesn't define that at all. So we're going to have to find out what this means. What does this tefillah mean? It's a different word. Why doesn't it say it's a mitzvah aseh? Why doesn't it say it's a positive commandment to serve God? La'avodat Hashem. It doesn't say that. It says it's a positive commandment, litpalel, to pray. So we're going to have to get a definition. What does this word to pray mean? Litpalel. Tefillah is the noun form. Tefillah is a prayer. So what does it mean? Now, if you remember the story about Pinchas, there was a horrible thing that happened in the camp, a rebellious act, and Zimri took the head of one of the tribes, took Cosby, this non-Jewish woman, and in public had relations with her. It was an outrage, a defiant outrage. And Pinchas, the zealot, steps up and he stabs them through and he kills them both on the spot. Wow. It's a pretty action-packed section of the Torah in Exodus. And the Psalms, King David paraphrases what happened in Psalm 106. What does King David say? Ve'amod Pinchas, Pinchas stood up, the zealot, ve'yafalel ve'te'atzer ha'magifa, right? A plague came. When this thing happened in public, it was such a desecration of God's name. A plague happened in the camp, and Pinchas stood up and he killed them. And we could spend a lot of time trying to understand that story. At any rate, when he did it, the plague stopped, and he got the Brit Shalom. He got the covenant for peace again, and was made a Kohen, was made a priest. So we need to do a deep dive one day on that story. At any rate, what's concerning us here is here's this little word here that's used. Remember, we got tefillah, and here's the yefalel. There's the root of that word. Pei lamed lamed is the root for tefillah. So now we have to go into the Talmud in Sanhedrin to try to understand what this word palel means. Palel. V'yamod Pinchas v'yifalel v'te'atzer magifa. He's quoting the verse in Psalms first. He stood up and he yefalel v'te'atzer magifa. The falel is judgment. He executed judgment. V'amar Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Elazar said, V'yitpalel lo ne'amar. It doesn't use the word that and Pinchas prayed, ela v'yefalel. It's a different form. One is the active and one is the reflexive. This is the reflexive. V'yitpalel, lihitpalel is a reflexive word. Doesn't say that, but it says he judged them. He executed judgment on them. This teaches us, shasa plilut, he did an act of judgment with God against them. And he killed Zimri and Cosby before Hashem. Right? And the plague ended. So that story's in Numbers 25:9. So if we come down here, we see, very interesting. Lefalel means to judge. Lahitpalel is the reflexive. Lirchotz means to wash something. Lahitrachetz means to wash myself. Lefalel means to judge somebody. Lahitpalel is reflexive, means to judge myself. So the tefillah, the word tefillah, which is lahitpalel, to pray, is the act of judging oneself. Whoa, interesting. So we have to serve God and do it daily. That's what the verse says. To serve God with our mind and our heart. And what's the avodah shebalev? He says it's tefillah. And over here, what's tefillah? Tefillah seems to be judging myself. All right? So I got to judge myself once each day. So wait a second. So how do I do that? How do we fulfill our obligation to pray? How do you do the prayer, right? Maimonides says we have to do it, and it's called prayer, but how do you do it? So here's, we continue on in his encyclopedia, the second point he makes. So he says here, it's an obligation for a person to daily, lihitchanen, a techina is a pleading. You plead before the court, you're begging the court for mercy. So you're asking for something, that's a techina, a supplication. Umitpalel, and pray every day. So how do you do that, says Maimonides? Umagid shivchol shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you shall say the praises of God Almighty, and afterwards, shoel tzarchav shehu tzarich, you shall ask from God everything that you need. Lahem bevakasha, how? Bevakasha, through a request, through a tchina, through a pleading. And after I ask for what I need, achar kach noten shevach v'hodaya, I give praise and I give thanks to Hashem on the good that He did for me. So we're judging ourselves. So we're supposed to be doing. And then how do we do that? By asking for our needs. The essence of prayer is bakasha, is asking. Now, everybody here, a lot of people here have children or grandchildren, right? What do you do when the kid says, can you give me $10, Mom? Like, what's up with that? Right? If you want to get the money, if the kid wants to get the money and they're smart, you got to be a little respectful. You come, you say, Mom, you're the greatest mom in the world. You take care of us. You're so amazing. You're so special. I love you so much. You're the greatest mom in the world. I'm going out with some friends. Could I have $10? And then you say, and you know, Mom, no matter what you decide, I know you only want what's good for me. I just want to thank you for everything you give me. You give me so much. You cook for me. You take care of me. Do everything. So whatever you decide is great. Better chance the kid's going to get the money, right? So that's basically when we say prayer, the essence of prayer is asking for God for our needs, but we do it in such a way that we praise God first. We sandwich it between praise and thanks. Just being a normal human being, right? Being polite. There's going to be other reasons why we're going to want to sandwich it between praise and thanks, but let's just say it's to be polite. All right, so how is it that to pray means to ask God to provide us with our needs at least once each day? And that is one and the same thing as judging ourselves. I want you to think about that a little bit, right? Judging ourselves is the same thing as asking God for our needs. Meaning, that's what I should be achieving anyway. By asking God for my needs, I should be achieving understanding myself and judging myself. All right. Now, I want to jump forward to another one of my teachers. This is my main teacher. He lived in the 18th century, the early 1700s, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and he was the great organizer of, if Maimonides was the organizer of Commandments, Luzzatto was the organizer of Jewish theology and philosophy, to organize how we look at the world through the eyes of God. So he has, in his book called Derech Hashem, a section on prayer. And he's going to say something very interesting that's going to connect back to our verses that we sourced earlier. He says, regarding prayer, I'll just say it in English, since the people receive bounty from the Almighty, that's where we get everything from. Without God, there's nothing. There's a need for them to arouse themselves toward him and seek his presence. It's a funny, there's no word for the Hebrew. The Hebrew, it oruru. The er is conscious, aware, right? So what I have to do is, if I want to, it's like your kid, when they're coming to you, they have to look you in the eye. They have to understand where everything they get comes from. So we have to, the more that we focus and wake ourselves up to the fact that it's God that's the source of all the blessing. And that's really, when people say we bless God, we recite a blessing, we say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, God. It's a misunderstanding most people have of those words. Baruch, the form of that word really means, I'm not blessing God. I'm not doing anything to God. Baruch means you, God, are Baruch, are blessed. You are the source of all blessing. That's what it means. When I say, when I'm making a blessing on the apple or on this, right? I say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, O God, right? Who creates so many beautiful scents in the world. It's a blessing we make, right? When we take pleasure from the world, it's a blessing to get the pleasure from the world. From that, actually, a green screen can't pick up the leaf, same color. I'm acknowledging God is the source of the blessing. God is the source of that basil leaf or that basil leaf, right? So we receive the bounty. We need to, when we acknowledge that God is the source, when your kid acknowledges, you know, Mom, it's not my money, it's your money. I appreciate it. And it's you who can decide, right? I need to acknowledge who the source is, because we're going to see in a second, it's all about the relationship. This is the theme we keep having on and on. Since the people receive the bounty from God, there's a need for us to acknowledge God, and so that the bounty will come down according to how much I'm connecting to God and acknowledging that God's the source of the blessing. But if I ignore God, why is God going to send it down? Because the blessing, the physical blessing, is the glue in the relationship, right? God, he's a giver. God created the world to be a giver. He wants us to have all the pleasure in the world, but he wants us to have the tools that we need in order to help achieve our spiritual potential. But the way we do that is through the physical world. So he wants us to have the blessing as long as we're going to use it in the right way. right? When your kid asks you for the $10 because they're going with one of their good friends who you know is a good kid and they want to go and watch a movie, say, here you go. If they say, oh, you got some friends, they're going to go get some drugs and they're going to go hang out in the park with the bad kids, are you going to give them the $10? You might not, right? So God wants us to have the blessing, right? All the time. So what did he do? He created tefillah, right? He calls it worship here. The word here is avodah zu. There's that word. The service. He created worship for us on a daily basis. He gave us the opportunity on a daily basis. And through that process, the bounty, the shefa, the bracha, the blessing will come down according to what I need and according to the situation in the world, right? So it's about me and my context. Sometimes the context will affect what I'm going to get and what I'm not going to get. Okay. Second point he makes is that God gave us an intellect. He wanted us to make our own choices in the world, navigate the world. He wanted to give us free choice. He wanted to give us independence, because the more independent we are, the more God-like we are. So he wanted to give us that opportunity. So he gave us an intellect. My Rosh Hashiva always used to say, God gave you a brain in order to use it with intelligence and understanding. So he gave us the ability to take care of ourselves. However, here's the problem. The more we get involved in the physical world, by definition, anything tangible, physical in this world is the antithesis of what God is. God is the ultimate transcendent being. So the more you get involved in physical things, the more disconnected you're getting from God, who's the transcendent being. So it's a danger. My soul is locked inside of my body. I can only do things in the physical world. So God created a remedy of me not getting caught up in the material world and becoming an animal, basically. He wanted me to stay a spiritual being. How? He said, first, we should come to the Almighty before we get involved in the physical world and ask for everything that we need. Make God a partner. Put ourselves on the expense account, on God's expense account, and say, God, I got to go out and do your will. I want to go and help some people out there. So I need some money so I can buy some sandwiches and hand them out to the poor people, right? So I cast my burden, whatever it is. If I need to pay the mortgage, I pray to God and I say, God, help me get this mortgage paid. I'm casting my burden on the Almighty. Now, when I do that, I can't get totally wrapped up in the physical. I can't, the biggest danger is kochi ve'otzem yadi, asali et hachai lazeh. It's my own hand that created the result. Then I'm connected with myself, not with God. So when I have my burdens, when I have the things that I need to accomplish, and I'm making God my partner, now I'm not going to get lost in the physical world. Now the physical blessing becomes a tool to bind me with God. See, Judaism is not, Torah is not about asceticism, not going up onto a mountaintop and disconnecting myself from the world. The more disconnected I am, the less chance. We do that once a year on Yom Kippur, right? We disconnect ourselves from food, from water, from everything. Just our soul standing before God. But that's not how this world is set up. This world is set up. God created a world for us through the physical world to be able to connect to him. And how do we do that? By making him a partner, by asking him, which stuff do I use? Oh, you don't want me to use a cheeseburger? Oh, okay. You want me to use a kosher hamburger? Okay, I'll eat that to fuel myself. So God, I'm hungry. I want to go out and do your will, but my stomach's grumbling. How am I going to help? How am I going to teach a class if my stomach's rumbling, right? I need some food. God, please, right? Help me out. Get me some food. And if I can't pay the mortgage, then how the heck am I going to do, I'm going to be running around borrowing money from people to pay the mortgage? How's that going to help you accomplish your goals? So send some money down from somewhere. Help me figure it out. Sell some olive oil for me, right? Find a new customer. They're going to sign up for subscription, right? So I can go and teach. Like, why am I spending all my time running around trying to get this? God, you take care of the olive oil stuff, get the customers, and I'll take care of teaching the Torah. How's that? Right? Hear it? So now the involvement that I have in the physical world, because I speak to God and I say, God, help me out here. I'm making you the partner. Send it to me, help me. All of a sudden, the physical world becomes the thing that's connecting me to the spiritual world. All right. So what do you ask for? What do you ask for? Torah doesn't define what we should be asking for. Doesn't say when we should be asking for it, how to do it. There's no help in the Torah. So now it's up to you. What are you going to ask for? Hear that? What are you going to ask for? You have a boss. He's infinite. He has infinite resources. He can give you anything. So I want to share with you a funny story. I was teaching in a seminary in Netanya to gap year girls from America who wanted to come and study some Torah before they began university. And very often their parents and families would come and visit. So one day, it was a Derech Hashem class, I was teaching this stuff. And the parents came, and a little brother was there along with like an 8-year-old brother, and the parents were there visiting the girl in the classroom. They would ask permission, can they sit in on the class? So I got to this point, I was teaching about prayer. So I said to them, have you been to Jerusalem yet? I said, no, they haven't been. They're going after the class. They're driving to Jerusalem. It was like a little over an hour drive. I said, great. So I said to the kid, I said, have you ever been to the Kotel? He said, no. I said, wow, so exciting. You're going to get to go, stand before Hashem, stand before God. You can ask him for anything. So you should prepare. What are you going to ask him for? So the kid's thinking, he's thinking. What does he say? I'm going to ask him for a new football, a new soccer ball. Right? That's us. That's us. Ask the parents. I said, so, and what are you going to go ask for? Oh, maybe I got a daughter who's dating, got to find a husband for her, need to pay off the mortgage, right? You guys have been to the Kotel. Who's been to the Kotel? Who's been to the Western Wall? What'd you ask for? You don't have to tell me. Write it down. Think back. What did you ask for? You went to Jerusalem, to the center of the universe, God's house, where the divine presence is standing, the infinite creator of the universe. He can create anything. He can give you anything. He wants you to have everything. And he knows you can't do it on your own, so you're totally dependent upon a free gift from him. Think back. What did you ask for? I'll bet you asked for a 40, 50, 60-year-old equivalent of a soccer ball, right? Right? We under-ask. I had a friend, I see Nicole and I see Stephen here and Richard, right? I had a friend, Chaim, and I used to help him. We used to go fundraising to help raise money for educational purposes, Jewish education. And before we went in, he said, stop, we can't go into the meeting. He'd grab my arm. I said, all right, well, what's the problem? He said, stop, we got to daven. We got to ask Hashem. Okay, Almighty, it's up to you, right? We don't know what the heck we're doing. Get this guy to give the tzedakah, right? We threw our burden. So we threw our burden on the Almighty. But God wants us to use our own brain. He doesn't want us to, no open miracles, remember? We got to use our brain. So remember, I was on another fundraising trip with another friend in Jerusalem. And we were meeting somebody we never met before, this really wealthy guy. We did research. He was from England, from London. We were meeting him in the lobby of the King David Hotel. And we went and never met this guy before. We sat down, they brought over a cup of coffee, introduces, nice to meet us. We tell him the project that we're working on. And he says, okay, so what do you need? What are you looking for? He said, well, we'd like $500,000. So he looks at us and he smiled. He says, you know something? So I can't give it to you today, but thank you for asking for $500,000. Right? Thank you, because that was an appropriate thing to ask this guy in his position. The natural tendency is to under-ask, right? The natural tendency is to under-ask. So when we're praying to God. First, we got to warm up. And that's why we're going to see there's going to be all kinds of praises at the upside before we even go ask. Before you go and ask, who are you dealing with here? Don't under-ask. Think big, ask big. We tend to get so caught up in our parochial little universe and our own little Dalit Amos, we say, our 4 cubits of our own little life, and we get laser focused. Of course we have to ask for that. Of course. You have to ask when you're looking for a parking spot and you're going shopping, you say, God, find me a parking spot in this crazy mall. Of course, because then the parking spot becomes a way of connecting with God. Every little thing should be. But don't limit yourself. So it's very interesting. In the beginning, in the old days, when people were much more spiritual and not caught up in the crazy material world that we're in, people knew how to ask. They knew what to ask for. The big stuff. When the first temple was destroyed, and we went into exile into Babylon, and then 70 years later, we're allowed to come back. Right after the Purim story, we're allowed to come back to build the second temple. The time of Ezra and Nehemiah, we had gotten such rough shape, low shape. We were semi-lingual, right? Some of our kids are what's semi-lingual. You're speaking 2 languages together in one. You can't speak English, you can't speak Hebrew, you're speaking Hinglish, right? Spanglish, you know, a little bit of Spanish, English, right? That's what we were. We'd forgotten how to use the words, how to use Lashon HaKodesh fully. So what did Ezra do? Ezra the prophet, the head of the Anshe Knesset Gadol, they said, you know what? They're so beaten up spiritually, and they can't articulate the prayers. What we're going to do is we're going to formulate it, right? And they formulated the actual essence of the prayer. We have an hour-long service, but the essence is this 15 or 10 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes where we actually do this prayer called the Amidah. I'm going to show it to you in a minute, where we do some praise, we do our asking, and then we do our thanks. And that's what's called the formal Amidah prayer. Now, do you have to stick to it? No. But as group prayer, or as individuals, we say that. And then during the day, outside of that, you should be doing your own praying, right? Whenever you need a parking spot, ask for God for help. When you're doing the Shmoneh Esrei, when you're doing the standardized prayer, when you get to a certain category, we'll see them in a minute, what you do is you add your own personal stuff, throw it in there. But for whatever reason, Ezra, the prophet, decided I want you to say these things in this order. We're going to take a look at that right now. If any of you haven't seen it, it's going to be very interesting. Okay. All right. This is an art scroll sitter, right? We have this big sitter that we use. If anybody wants one, I gave you a link here just to see what it is. And this is what's called the Amidah, the standing prayer, or it's called the Shmoneh Esrei, the 18 blessings prayer, or 19 blessings prayer. And we're going to go through it very quickly. It's on the source sheet, so you can look at it on your own, or you can get a sitter, do some research. We could spend dozens of classes just on this one prayer, okay? But I just wanted to give you an overview so we can deal with our point at the end of the session today about how to save the world. All right, the standard prayer. So first we ask God to help us pray, right? Remember, we're supposed to throw our burdens onto God. So I'm about to pray. So before I pray, I should say, okay, God, help me pray. And the first 3 blessings are acknowledging that God is the source of all blessing, are called the praise category. So the first thing we do is we mention the patriarchs, the relationship that God had with the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the merit that we get by being part of that family, right? And that ultimately God will bring a redeemer, and he will, no matter how bad things get, he will rescue us. And so that's one praise, right? He's capable of, no matter how bad things get, of redeeming us. He has this power. He has the power to resurrect the dead. He has the power to make the wind blow and the rain fall. In Israel, we're totally dependent upon that. We have a Lake Kinneret, but this little small lake down here is so below sea level, it's not much of a help. For the farmers in the country, we are totally dependent upon rain. You sustain with kindness. You support you heal the sick. You set captives free. We're just doing a review of all the amazing things. The main thing is this miracle of ultimately when people die, they live in the world to come. Okay, and then we talk about how he's kadosh. Kadosh means separate, transcendent, that he's beyond everything of time and space and the creator of time and space, and you can't get greater than that, right? Again, that talks about him being the infinite creator of the universe. We can have anything. So this prepares us. It's praising God, but why are we praising God? It's not like the kid trying to put the mother in a good mood that she'll give the allowance. That's not what we're doing it for. Obviously, God wants us to do the praising for us. Like we had to do the praising of the donor so that we wouldn't under-ask. We had to do the research to see how powerful the donor was to understand what's appropriate to ask for. Okay. Now we get into the request section. First thing we ask for is wisdom. Remember back we saw in the Lutzato, in the Ramchal, in the way of God. He said, God wants us to figure things out on our own. So the first thing we need before we're going to do anything else is we need to have wisdom and understanding. We have to be able to work things out. So that's the first thing we ask for. Then the second thing we ask for is, listen, we're here to ultimately achieve our potential. God wants us to have everything. We are human beings. We make mistakes. So what we want is we want him to help us get back on track when we make mistakes. Every day we're making mistakes. And here it's interesting. If we translate this, bring us back to your instruction. It's an interesting translation because it says Torah Techa, to your Torah. Bring us back to your Torah, which is the user's guide, and draw us near to you and to your service and bring us back to you in full repentance. We're asking him to help us get on track to be God's employee, to be on God's expense account, to help get God's agenda done in the world. Then we ask for forgiveness so that we'll have a clean slate. And then redemption. That he should redeem us individually or redeem us as a people from the diaspora, the suffering that we're doing in exile. Next thing we ask for is health, meaning, again, I have to accomplish things in the physical world, so I need good health. The Almighty, give me good health so I can do your will in the world. Prosperity, I need money. The world runs on money. Transactions need money. So here we're talking particularly in the agricultural sense that it should be a blessing, but this is a blessing not just for the crops should come in an agrarian society. The crops are the thing that are going to determine your prosperity. But in our society, it's send customers, get people to buy the olive oil, right? Make it the best year possible. Make sure there's rain so that we get great olive oil, and make sure that the harvest comes in, and make sure that we get everything on the website properly, right? God, help me. I need you as my partner. I need the blessings so that we can have the funds to do what you want us to do. So these are at the individual level. Because at one point, I'm an individual trying to fulfill my own potential, but I'm part of the nation of Israel, and we have a national mandate. So I need to not forget that. Remember down at the Kotel, am I asking for my parochial needs? Or am I asking for national needs? Don't forget the national needs. This is God with his agenda for the Jewish people and for the world. So next we have ingathering of the exiles. Sound the great shofar of cherutenu, of our freedom, to liberate us from the oppression of the nations that we're under. Raise the banner, Nes, right? The banner, and to gather the exiles from the four corners of the earth. We pray for this people 3 times a day. Ezra, the prophet, said when only a tiny number came out of Babylon and the vast majority stayed in Babylon because they had good businesses, how could they leave their business? How could they leave their elderly mother? How could they leave their... A very small ragtag group came back. And he said, pray for the ingathering of the exiles back then and to this day. Just want to talk, Seth Rogen. This is a big controversy this week. A Jewish kid, right, coming out with a new movie. They interviewed him and he said, outrageous. Israel's stupid, right? Why would you want to put all the Jews in one place? Just makes you a big target. Ezra says, no. We want them all here. In a godless world, you're right. Divide your assets. Divide your assets. So if they blow you up over here with ammonium nitrate, you'll be safe over there and they won't kill you all at once, right? So if you're dealing from a secular point of view, especially after the Holocaust, say, stupid idea to put all the Jews in Israel. People are upset with him. But from a secular Jewish point of view, so we're praying for that. Ezra says, pray for it. Then justice. Remember last time on Tisha B'Av, we talked about restoring Anshe Amanah, that the secret to rebuilding the society in Israel is trustworthy leaders in the government, which we're suffering right today. There are people protesting as I speak against Prime Minister Netanyahu to get him out of office and throw him in jail. That's what's happening. The wicked, there's a prayer, the enemies that are trying to stop us from fulfilling our mandate as the Jewish people. Stop them, God, right? How are we going to defeat our enemies? It's not about what we can do in our arms. We need you to help us deal with our enemies. And the righteous, in order, the people that are choosing to be on your team and to do your will, make sure that there's a blessing towards them. The proselytes, the people that choose to become part of the Jewish people. Give them reward. Why? We need the world to see that. We need to see that you take care of the people who love and fear you. Then Jerusalem. Restore the city of Jerusalem, not just the city as we have it now. This is a reference to rebuilding the temple. We're praying 3 times a day for the last 2,000 years more for God to rebuild the temple and bring back and restore the lineage of David, that the kingship should be restored like Saul, like David, and then Solomon restore a Jewish king from the line of King David, and that is the Messiah. In a society that's running the way society runs, however, with Anshe Amanah, with trustworthy leaders, and that we can create a society that's a light to the nations. All right? Then we pray that God should accept our prayer. And we ask God to be pleased with the group service that we did and that we should restore the temple service, because part of the prayers that are established by Ezra was that we say these things and we say them at the times when the offerings were offered at the temple. So it replaces the temple service. Okay, then we have 3 blessings that are thanksgiving. We thank God, right? So we praised God, we asked, and now we're thanking. And we thank God, and then at the very end, we talk about God, please give peace, goodness, and blessing to the people of Israel. And that formally ends our Shemona Esrei, which is our national communal prayer that we pray together. And at the end of the service, of every single service, we pray that there should be peace to the entire world, that the world should be rectified under the kingship of the Almighty, and God's shall be one, and his name shall be one, and all the people, there'll be peace all over the world. So we pray for peace for the Jewish people in the national prayer, and then in the prayer service, which has pieces in it, including reciting the Shema, which is our mission statement, God is one. And we say Psalms to get us in the frame of mind, to lift us to the point where we're prepared to do the asking. And then at the end, we have some more Psalms, and we end up with the Pray Aleinu, which is asking for peace for the whole world. All right. How many, that's the first time you saw what a Jewish prayer is? Okay. It's long. Actually, I did some research on what the Muslims do. It's very short. No wonder they can do it 5 times a day. It's very short. They just want to focus and reconnect to God. Alu Akbar. They ask for mechila, for forgiveness. They do want to do tshuva. And that's the main thing, right? This is getting ready to do it. So here we talk a lot, right? There's a lot of words here. Now, why are we using other people's words instead of my own words? So we do use our own words. When I'm asking for sustenance, right? Prosperity, throw in, hey, God, help me get a few more customers for olive oil this week. Nothing wrong with that, right? So we do use our own words, and I don't have to stick to the fixed times. The fixed times coincide when the temple service was happening during the day. I should be talking to God all day, making God my partner all day. Now, why in the formal communal prayer am I using somebody else's words? So I used to say this is the chinning bar. This is the chinning bar. If we go back to Seth Rogen, I remember I was at that point at some point when I was living in Toronto. I said, you know what? It doesn't make sense to have all the Jews. There's only 12, 13, 14 million of us. Put us all in there. You saw the devastation that this mini 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate can do. Just throw a couple nukes and you're finished. We shouldn't have all the Jews in Israel. And you know what? When I was becoming observant and I started praying and I was reading that, I wasn't relating to it, right? Gather us together from the 4 corners of the earth. I didn't believe it, but I'm forced to say it. So what's that doing? What is that really telling me? We know what a little boy who plays soccer is going to ask for at the kotel. He's going to ask for the soccer ball. We know what the parent who's trying to marry off a daughter is going to ask for at the kotel. We know somebody who's got a relative who's suffering from a horrible disease is going to ask for at the kotel. What is a prophet going to ask for? If a prophet goes down to the temple, to the kotel, what is a prophet going to ask for? You know what a prophet's going to ask for? Everything we just read. Ezra was the prophet. The Anshe Knesset Gedolah were prophets. Prophets who get their ego out of the way, get their little small stuff. Don't sweat the small. You need to sweat the small stuff, but you know what? They're sweating the big stuff because they see the world the way God sees it. That's what a prophet is. If you're a prophet, what are you going to ask for? These things. So when I'm reading that, and I don't relate to ingathering the exiles, what's that's telling me? That's showing me how far away I am from being a prophet. Isn't that true? You see that? It's like a chinning bar. How am I doing? I'm not feeling that one. You know what? Years after, when I made Aliyah, and I lived here for a while, and then I went back to Toronto, right? I see Nicole and Amir over there, and Richard. There's a whole different attitude. When I read that, I cried. When I went to the diaspora and I saw what was happening in the diaspora, and I was reading this prayer, bring the Jews from the 4 corners of the earth, I believed it with everything in my heart and my soul. Am I a prophet? No. but I know I'm getting a little closer, because the more I can relate to the prayers that are being asked for, restore the temple. Am I satisfied with going down to the Kotel? Or is that's not enough, God? We need the temple. Right? So using somebody else's words, if they're the words of a prophet, and my goal is to become a prophet, meaning God wants us to achieve our spiritual potential. The ultimate spiritual potential is to be a prophet. Will I make it? We don't have prophecy in this day, but that's our chinning bar. I'm happy to have those fixed times during the day to stretch me, because that's how I judge myself, right? Remember we said asking is judging? How do you judge a person? Based on what they're doing or what they want? You see somebody who's a brain surgeon and they're saving lives every day, and you go, wow, what a they've spent so many years to learn how to be a brain surgeon, and they're saving lives every day. It's unbelievable, alleviating so much suffering for the individuals and their families and restoring them. What an amazing human being. And you go up to them and say, wow, why'd you decide to be a surgeon, brain surgeon? And he says, yeah, well, when I was in medical school, I checked out which medicine paid the most money, because my ultimate goal is to build a big mansion and have lots of girls around and sports cars. And as soon as I get finished making enough money from this brain surgery, that's what I want. That's what I'm striving for. That's what I want. What's a better judge of who you are? What you're doing, or what you're asking for, what you're seeking, what your goals are, right? When I get to ask God for whatever it is that I want, that's a good indicator of who I am as a person. Am I just asking for take care of my financial problems? It shows me the kind of person I am. Am I praying for other people? It tells me what kind of a person I am. See that? So the other thing is, by asking, people ask me, why do I want, I did it in the morning. I asked God for wisdom, and now it's the afternoon. It's only a few hours later, and I'm asking for the same thing again. And then I'm asking for the same thing again. God forgot what I said? God forgot what I want? Why do I have to keep doing it over and over and over and over again? The same fixed prayer. Doesn't it get boring? So I'll give you a little insight. How did I make Aliyah? You know how I made Aliyah? When I woke up, this idea in Toronto, there's a God, and he created the universe, and he created the Jewish people, and he gave us the Torah, and he gave us a land to be the light unto the nations, right? And I said, and I decided that was real. It wasn't just a myth. And now I'm praying. And I said, v'kabtzenu yachad merabakam fot haaretz. You should gather us together from the four corners of the earth and bring us back to Israel. That's in the morning, at 7 in the morning, right? 4 p.m. And gather us together from the four corners of the earth. And gather us together in the corner. In the meantime, there's a state with cell phones. There's a state with jobs. There's an El Al airline to fly me over the ocean miraculously. They're going to give me money at that point in terms of cargo. Wait, so I'm asking God to bring me back from the four corners of the earth. For 2,000 years, they pogromed, they plagued us, right? All of a sudden, it's 1982. I get on a plane. Law of return, instant citizenship, silver platter. Here's some money. We'll give you some help with rent for the first year. We'll help you find a job. We have ulpans for you to learn Hebrew. Silver platter, right? Imagine your kid coming to you and saying, Mom, can I have $10? And you look them in the eye, you say, here, sweetie, here's the $10. And they stare at you, turn around, and walk away. Don't take the money. And 6 hours later, they come back and say, hey, Mom, can I have the $10? You say, sure, sweetie, here you go. And you stick your hand out, offer them the $10. They look at you with a blank stare, turn around and walk away. What's up with that? pretty soon you're going to say, I got to do something to shake this kid up. I got to the point, I said, well, if I'm asking for this 3 times a day, every day, and God's offering it to me on a silver platter, I don't take it, why would he give me anything else that I'm asking for? Why would he help me with my mortgage? I'm an ingrate. You're asking for wisdom. So in the wisdom thing, you throw in there the Hebrew. God, help me learn Hebrew. 6 hours later, you say, God, help me learn Hebrew. 6 hours later, you come, God, help me learn Hebrew. God leans forward and says, did you open up a textbook in the meantime since the last time you were here? How serious are you about this? How serious are you about what you're asking for? If you ask for something and you give up after 1 time, how serious was it? How important? God, help me win the lottery. Didn't win the lottery. You weren't. That's judging yourself. That's telling you who you are. Only by asking for it over and over and over again do you really understand what your values are. What's valuable for you in order to keep going and insisting and understanding why do you need it. If your mom doesn't give you the $10, let's say she doesn't give it to you. What do? You don't come back and ask for it again. You go, why didn't she give it to me? Maybe she doesn't like the friend I was planning on going with. Find a different friend. Okay, I found a different friend. Can I have the $10? No. Oh, maybe she didn't know where I was going. I was going to go to this party. She didn't want me to go to the party. Okay, Mom, I'm going to go with the good friend, and now I'm going to go to a movie that you like, that you can, make sure it's appropriate. She give it to you or not? You have to see your value, what's valuable for you, and you have to, if it's valuable, you keep asking for it. If it's not valuable, drop it. If you don't believe in it, drop it. Now, in terms of the fixed prayers, don't drop them. Because if you drop them, like Seth Rogen, they don't exist anymore. They cease being a potential value even, and it never happens. And this, I just want to finish up, and I'm sorry I went over a couple minutes. This is the problem in Israeli society and in American society. Even on the right, in America, if you have a value system, you have a Bill of Rights, you have a Constitution, you have amendments, right? Values. Anybody teaching them in the schools? Is there a civics class left in America today? How do you expect to have people value something if they don't even know what it is? Why are the Jewish people still here after 2,000 years? A nation in the diaspora, no land, pogroms, killing us, destroying. You know why we're here? Because we know what our value system is. You know why? Because 3 times a day, when you're in the depths of the Middle Ages, in the Black Plague, and they're blaming you for the Black Plague, forget Corona, and they're slaughtering you and burning you at the stake for being witches because you're not dying because you're washing your hands, because the Torah says wash your hands all the time, right? Before you eat and after you go to the bathroom, right? We're witches, they're burning us, they're killing us. What are we doing? Every child, every adult. Bring back the judges, bring us from the 4 corners of the earth, bring us back to the land. God, you are incredible. You can do anything. You will do anything. You made this promise. Every single person in the society was literate. 3 times a day, we're articulating what's valuable to us, not giving up hope. That unites the people. That makes us the eternal nation. Because we study our values, we make sure there's universal education. We teach Torah, right? We put honey on the page when the kid is learning his first letter, so it's sweet. That it's a pleasure to become literate, because without literacy, without your own mind, you can't decide what to do. You can't learn the instructions, how to do it. You can't pray, and the prayer is an articulation of our values because it's about bakasha, and that's why the essence of prayer is requesting, because requesting is a way of instilling the values in the people. Just to say, God, you're great, God, you're great, God, you're great, what does that do? What do you stand for? God, you're great. God's great without me. God wants me to fix the world, to bring world peace. He's giving me instructions how to do it. And in order to do, that's the value. So the value is ask God for help to achieve those things. And if you don't ask for it, it means not valuable to you. Like the whole Seth Rogen episode. That's what you need in America. That's what we need in Israel. The split in Israel is because of the lack of the common values. You have half the country that gets it. The other half of the country are Seth Rogens. That's our problem. That's our problem. I got to deal with that. We have to deal with that. We have to deal with the Jews in North America and the diaspora. That's our problem. Your problem is you got to get your society together. And the way we do that is to have this symbiotic relationship also. Right? But without education, without having a dialogue about what your values are and get common agreement on what the values are, you can't pull people together. What's valuable? What's valuable to the left? What's valuable to the right? You have to show what the payoff is for the value. See that? All right. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And that prayer is much more than just praising God. Prayer is much more than just thanking God. Prayer, when it's done properly, is a tool for individual and national growth to help achieve our goals by articulating clearly what our values are and constantly measuring myself. How am I connecting and relating to those values, and how much energy am I putting into achieving those values? So my bracha for all of you is that you do it at an individual level and share that and be a model for your friends and for your neighbors, and that we bring the Mashiach soon in our time.